So what you're saying then is I need to change my perspective on what my budget does for me. My budget doesn't restrict me. It empowers me to be able to spend my money on the things I want it to be.
Yes. You're giving yourself the option to do different things down the road that you may not even know you want to do right now. But when you get there, you're going to have the means to say, oh, I can follow this path.
So when it comes to budgeting, though, I hate it. Does everyone else feel like, ugh,
yeah,
this
most
big,
people.
yeah, like
right.
why do I have to do this? I'm in my late 30s. I've worked now for decades. Why do I have to live by the restraints of a budget?
So budgeting, if you look at budgeting as a restrictive thing, yeah, why would you do that? Especially if you make decent money and you're not drowning in debt.
Yeah.
If you look at budgeting as the way to make sure that you're going to reach the goals that you set for yourself, and that's the metric you can use, and you build it such that you don't get rid of the stuff that you enjoy, you get rid of the stuff you don't, that's a whole different way of looking at it, right? So if I say to you, hey, do you want to stop spending on all the things that you have fun with because you can save money? The answer is probably going to be no. If I say, hey, how would you like to stop paying so much for insurance that you can get for the same price somewhere else for the better coverage? And how would you like to stop paying for a bunch of stuff you forgot you were paying for in the first place? Doesn't seem like a big deal, right?
Right.
So that's what we do when we actually work with people on the coaching side of things. It's figuring out, where's all this money leaking out? Because most of the time there's money going everywhere and you just don't know it if you're not really paying attention. Or it's been going there so long, you don't know that it's potentially something you don't have to be spending money on. So we look at that and say, okay, where do you actually want this money to go? Because you probably want to spend more on the things that you like. So let's do that.
Yes.
But let's make sure that you do it responsibly by not having to take out more, debt, HELOC, credit card, whatever. Let's make sure that all of your money is working for you and not for somebody else. So that's what we do.
I love that viewpoint. So what you're saying then is I need to change my perspective on what my budget does for me. My budget doesn't restrict me. It empowers me to be able to spend my money on the things I want it to be going to.
So I gave a talk about our Money in the Brain talk, basically, at BYU's Show Me the Money event a few weeks ago. And when you ask people how do they feel about budgeting, most people feel like that's a problem, right? About 25%, 30% enjoy it because that concept for them is great. And for some people, that works really, really well, especially people who like rules-based thinking, that sort of thing, because it's something that they can say, this is a rule, this is what I'm doing, and going to follow that. For most people, they don't like that. But I said, okay, well, how about if I told you that we were going to have you follow a super awesome life plan? And if you follow this plan, you're going to have a super awesome life. Would that be more, something you'd rather follow? And all the people who hated budgeting were like, yeah, I'll follow that. Cool. What if they're the same thing? Because they are, right? You just have to look at it differently to say, if I follow this plan, I'm going to give myself the opportunity to do all these things that I want to do in the time that I want to do them. And if I don't, then I'm not going to necessarily have those same opportunities when I feel like I want them. So for some people, it's kind of like with retirement. People think, oh, it's way off. I don't need to worry about it. It's like, well, you could do that. And then at some point, it's not going to be way off and you're going to be super stressed about it because you haven't done the things you need to do to make it easier. But if we think about it up front, you're giving yourself the option to do different things down the road that you may not even know you want to do right now. But when you get there, you're going to have the means to say, oh, I can follow this path.
I love that. So we're giving ourselves more abilities to choose, right? Make choices, whatever those might end up being, because we can't predict the future, even though I wish we could.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. So this whole concept of budgeting, or I'm going to call it our awesome life plan, because I love that.
Super awesome life plan. Yeah.
Super awesome life plan. Obviously, it's something that we as a society struggle with anyways, right? We can pull up all the stats of Americans and debt and all the things, right? tell me, how does this change even more so for a person that lives on a variable income?
So variable incomes are super tricky for a lot of reasons, especially for people who have these crazy wild swings in what is a typical month, right? So if you have somebody who, take a look at somebody who does lawn care, for instance, right?
Yeah.
4 or 5 months out of the year, things are gangbusters. They're making money hand over fist because people need lawns cut, right? What do they do outside of that, right? They don't have that steady income, or it's nowhere near what it was. Some of them will turn to hanging Christmas lights for a month or two. But for people like that, how do you plan how much you can spend? It's really, really difficult.
Yeah.
What they end up doing instead is spending what they see come in and then waiting to see what comes in. And you can't really do that consistently if your income fluctuates a lot, because what you're going to end up doing is spending next month's money today.
And yeah, that's not ideal.
No, that's a hard way to budget or to really have a super awesome life, because next month, if the money doesn't come in, you've already spent what you needed to pay the bills. And now you're stressed out, and now you're looking for, okay, how do I get this? What do I do to pay rent, pay mortgage, pay the car payment, buy food, all those things, if I don't have enough money coming in?
Yeah. So one thing I was looking at is when we really talk about who has variable income, oh my gosh, there's way more people.
It's a ton of people.
Yeah, way more people than I even realized.
Right. So, I mean, you're talking about people who work with commissions. Right. So any salesperson who maybe makes a commission, makes a cut, even if they have base plus commission, right? So they still get a variable income. People who get salary bonuses. So if you maybe get a performance bonus as part of your expectation for work, that's a variable income. I was actually thinking yesterday, just as I was falling asleep, I had this, lightning bolt go off, of course, which is when they always happen. But I was thinking about National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. And,
of course. How do you not think of that right before you fall asleep?
That's what you should. So Clark W. Griswold, puts down a deposit for a pool for the family, and he's counting on his bonus check to be the thing that's going to fund this pool. And the whole movie is based on this premise that, he's going to get this bonus check that never seems to arrive. And when it does, it's a subscription to the Jelly of the Month Club, which completely throws off his entire, financial plan.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, there you go. There's somebody who's a variable income, gets a bonus, has already pre-spent that bonus. And when it doesn't come in, now what do? Right? Now they're stuck. Now they're in a bad place.
Now you kidnap your boss. And,
right. You got to, there's a whole, Randy Quaid, there's a whole lot that goes into that after that. I don't want to ruin the movie for anybody who, somehow hasn't seen it, but yeah, so people who just get a bonus, hourly workers, people who maybe get overtime, people who have side gigs, right? You drive for Uber, maybe you sell, an MLM product, something like that. You're going to have a variety of income and a variety of income sources. And if you don't know how to plan for that appropriately, then you end up either overspending too early, or you're not sure whether you can spend when you do have extra money.
Yeah. And that's, I think at one time or another, most everyone falls into that category, right?
Right.
I mean, when you look at I can think of when I was 14 and got my first job, it for sure was variable income, right?
Yeah.
Even before that, I guess, right? We were all babies. Back in the day, you guys, babysitters did not make good money. You babysitters nowadays don't know how good you have it. When I was asked, oh my gosh, what's your hourly rate? I was blown away. I'm like, I got paid maybe $2 an hour, folks, to change those dirty diapers. And now I do it for free, but it's fine. Right. It's fine. So you touched on a little bit of them. What are those challenges when it comes to managing a variable income? Obviously, we know that it's not always going to be that same steady paycheck with the same steady expenses, which none of us really have same steady expenses. But what are your thoughts on that?
Right. So really for people who are in that situation, it's hard to figure out when do I actually have extra and what can I do with that extra, or what should I do with that extra?
Yeah.
And that's really what you want to try to get a better handle on if you're a variable income earner. And the more that you can predict when that income is going to be good or bad, the easier this gets. But for people who have variable income, they just want to be able to maintain a fairly steady budget, right?
Okay.
So you want to figure out what are the actual expenses that you're going to have to pay every month. How much does that add up to? And then kind of what's the difference between what you can generally expect to earn every month? And you go from there.
Okay. So really understanding what the difference is.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so what I would suggest people do, you look at the past, say, 2, 3, 4 months, and you say, okay, what have my expenses been? And what is that, what is that number that I need to hit in order to pay all the bills that I know are coming in, the mortgage, the rent, the insurance, pay for food, pay for, recurring expenses. Gas is another big one. You can kind of ballpark those things. So those are going to change a little bit, but you want to have an idea of what those are going to be. And that's your average budget. And then look at the past year of income and say, what is the month that I made the least amount of money? And what's the difference between the least amount of money that I've made and what that minimum threshold of what I need to make to cover my bills is? And that's the gap that you're trying to cover when things are good.
Okay.
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 So I suggest people look at that number. So maybe that number is, $1,000. Maybe in your sort of worst month, you made $1,000 less than what your minimum bills are going to be.
Okay.
So you probably want to have a 2-month cushion. So when things are good and you're making more than that minimum, you throw the money into a savings account that you call buffer.
Okay.
And you can do this with Mountain America. You can do this with other institutions. If you have the ability to do a secondary savings account, name it as buffer. So it's not just sitting in your regular savings account. Kind of the worst thing people can do is have one account called savings and just put all their money in there. Because savings for what? Savings for vacation, savings for an emergency, savings for when the car breaks down. What are you saving for? And so breaking it out into separate accounts that you name makes it a lot easier to see, okay, do I have the money that I need to cover whatever it is that I'm trying to cover when it comes up?
Okay, interesting. I would say that is different than what I've heard before. Obviously, I've heard of secondary savings and naming your money and giving your money every dollar has a destination type thing, right? Curious though, with this buffer account, am I now trying to save? Do I still have an emergency fund where it's like 3 to 6 months to 9 months to a year of expected stuff there? Because now this is a lot of money I got to save, Scott.
It could be, right. And, emergency funds, that's different for different people. Some people like 3 months, some people like 6 months, some people really only need a month and a half.
Okay.
And so I would say the answer is yes, the buffer account is different than your emergency savings account.
Okay.
Because the buffer account is not...
It's just going to float me from month to month
This is what's going to even out your kind of bumpy ride when you're not making the money.
Okay.
Right?
And so separate from emergencies.
So look at this as a separate thing. What you really want to essentially do is create a steady paycheck for yourself. Okay. That pays out the same amount of money consistently and without fail. And that's what you're doing. And so once you have that, like a regular, W-2 employee, somebody who just gets a salary, then you can base all of your spending decisions, saving decisions off of that. When you do have, let's back up for a second. Then you save, when you have good months and you're making over your minimum, you save 2 months worth into your buffer account, basically, right? So you can cover 2 consecutive bad months if that looks like it's going to work for you. For some people, you may need to do more, right? If you're one of those seasonal workers and you say, actually, I'm going to need 4 months because this is just the way my business, rolls.
Yeah, we're doing lawn care, and then in the off season, it's not there.
So this is kind of a general rule, but I like to say at least 2 months, right? If you can have 2 months of a buffer for your worst month, then that's great.
Okay.
But then if you have more than that, you have another account that you call bonus. And this is the trick that makes it easier for people to sort of swallow, because the bonus account is where you actually have extra money. You remember we talked about you don't know if you're going to be spending next month's money today, right?
Yes.
This is how you know. Because if your buffer account is full, that's potentially next month's money. But after that, bonus money that's legitimately extra money. That's money that you can use to do some really cool things with. So this is where I tell people, use the bonus money to supercharge maybe your vacation fund, right? So if you want to go on a really nice vacation, you're going to pay for that out of your bonus money. You're going to use that to fund new purchases, maybe home improvements, new car, things like that. That can all come out of that bonus money because you're sure that that's not money you're going to need next month to pay the mortgage.
I got it. Okay, that makes sense. And I love that there's a difference too. Again, I feel like we've all been told, oh, save, right? Save for that emergency fund and nothing else. But no, I can save not only for my emergency fund, my buffer, my bonus, my vacation, all the things.
It sounds more complicated because there's more things, but funny enough, it actually removes the stress. So because you have a little bit of a system and you're not constantly saying, okay, is this $1,000 in my savings account my emergency fund, or is this my, concert just rolled into town and I want to go tonight fund? If you don't know, then that's more stressful, because if you just spent the money on the concert and tomorrow the car breaks down, where's that money coming from? You want to be able to know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that totally makes sense.